titans of industry, strongholds of craft, places of worship, of rest and respite. Buildings across the country, once pillars of community and economy, are now remnants of our heritage, dilapidated, abandoned and neglected. What should we do with our historic buildings? Are they relics of the past with no use in the future? Today there is a lively national debate on the question, but it wasn't always this way.
We discovered that applications to demolish listed historic buildings were coming in at the rate of 1 a day. We were geared up by the success of the destruction of the Country House exhibition at the V&A.
In 1974, a landmark exhibition was staged at the Victoria and Albert Museum in London, showcasing the vast number of country houses that had been demolished across the country. The exhibition's companion book listed over 1,000 houses which had been lost, with the number rising to over 1,600 by the time the exhibition closed. The exhibition caught the imagination of the public, spiking visits to country houses around the country, where over 1.5 million signatures were collected in support of keeping these buildings accessible to the public. In the wake of the exhibition, Save Britain's Heritage was formed, with a new perspective on campaigning.
Well, we just felt that a more punchy approach to endangered buildings was really needed. There was too much, we'll go through the usual channels, we'll write to the minister, have a word with the chairman of the county council, and we felt the real battleground was the media, and this proved to be correct.
In the years that followed, Save has been a prolific advocate for historic buildings of all types. Early campaigns by Save led directly to the creation of the Railway Heritage Trust and the National Heritage Memorial Fund. Save was instrumental in saving Battersea Power Station, Bankside Power Station, now Tate Modern in London, Barlaston Hall in Staffordshire, and Dumfries House in Scotland, to name but a few. While Save's early successes are cause for great celebration, the need for conservation action today remains as urgent as ever.
There's a whole myriad of reasons why buildings become at risk and under threat, but it's mainly to do with ownership, it's to do with land values, it's to do with lucrative planning permissions, and it's also to do with pure neglect and lack of financial resources. The whole mixture of all of those elements create this perfect storm where we find really good buildings under threat and at risk.
While grand country houses might have been the catalyst for this movement, Save was one of the first advocates for industrial buildings, determined that with creative thought and innovation, they could have a new life and fulfill a vital purpose for communities.
It's such an important part of the city and of the area. Many people have families going back whose ancestors worked in the mill. At one time it employed 7,000 people on this site. Whichever area you come into Bradford, you see the chimney. I was really pleased when a group of people got together to say, as ordinary people, we must do something about this. I think it's really important for communities that there's a development of historic buildings within them. I think it gives grounding to people who live here.
Following early actions by Save and later a community campaign, Urban Splash developed Lister Mills in 2006, creating almost 200 homes and commercial units.
A lot of people have got attachments to these buildings, whether it's you work there or you shop there or their grandmother used to work there, their grandfather. Everyone's got a story about this building. And just knocking that down and starting again, all those stories get completely lost.
In Grimsby, Save fought to protect the historic fish docks. A focused media campaign led to the Casbah and the Ice Factory being included on the World Monuments Fund global watch list of endangered buildings.
My grandfather was a fisherman here. But back in the day, they were given fishermen cottages if they worked the docks, and he still lives there to this day. And working here, I get to relate to him in a way, because I can go see him and we talk about it, and he tells me about how he was back in the day working the boats. And it is important to Grimsby in a way, because it's heritage. It's a big part of Grimsby, because Grimsby was always known for fish.
Well, our business is a traditional smokehouse, so Alfred Enderby are smoking here in this building and have done in exactly the same way for over 100 years. I mean, this was where all the fish was processed once upon a time, and these buildings are beautiful and they should be maintained.
So we now have a conservation area, which I don't think we would have had without the Save campaign. It really raised the profile of Grimsby. A lot of interest raised in the area and in conserving the buildings and finding a new future for them.
Britain has a long history of insisting that development necessitates demolition. Few campaigns demonstrate that this need not be the case better than the fight to save Liverpool's Wells Streets.
Save is a small team. It takes on big projects and big opposition in the form of central government on occasion. In Liverpool, of course, 600 viable houses were to be demolished at government's expense to make a flat space for someone else to build a fewer number of residential units.
These houses were being boarded up as they were being purchased by the council for demolition, so you would bring people here and some people would see their beauty or value or utility, but others would just think, oh, well, it's a shame, but it's going to happen, it's boarded up. We need to tidy the place up and they've got to go, you know.
On the Wells Streets, following a long campaign in partnership with the local community, Save worked with an expert legal team to win a hard-fought public inquiry, resulting in the refusal of the council's demolition plans.
We had signs put in windows, save our houses, and the end result was we got these lovely, lovely houses restored again from the way I knew them when I was a child. It's absolutely fantastic.
Another example of how we work creatively is the Smithfield Market, which was under threat from an office development. And as part of our campaign to stop that demolition and to reuse those buildings, we got in touch with Lady Gaga. And Lady Gaga is famous, of course, for that meat dress that she famously wore. We managed to get Lady Gaga lookalikes to walk across Westminster Bridge with placards saying, "Save Smithfield Market," and obviously, ultimately, we won.
The key to a successful campaign is finding the right new use for a building, proving that a building can have a new life. Every now and then, something remarkable happens.
For us to move into Smithfield is an extraordinary opportunity. We have London Collection, which is 7.5 million objects, and to be housed in a charismatic late Victorian building and post-World War II 1960s building would really bring the stories of London to life. It's extraordinary. Going into a building which has had a former life, you know, the buildings we're going to occupy are market buildings, old market buildings. And for a museum to inhabit those buildings means that we can tell the story of the Smithfield area through the buildings themselves. I'm really confident that when we open London Museum in 2026 here, it will be a huge draw. We're expecting 2 million people to visit.
As well as bolstering the local economy, historic buildings are also great assets in addressing the climate emergency. With around 40% of emissions coming from the built environment, reusing our buildings has never been more urgent.
What's so interesting over the last few years is how our campaigning is really focused on the embodied carbon of buildings.
We're on a trajectory to net zero determined by the government. And that trajectory, at the moment, most new buildings are above that trajectory, so we need to get below it. And there's really only two ways to do this. One is to design really low carbon buildings, and the other way is to reuse what we already have.
In 2021, Marks & Spencer announced plans to demolish their 1920s flagship store on Oxford Street, London. Save launched a campaign to stop the demolition, and a case was brought to the High Court with carbon and heritage impact being considered for the first time.
The M&S case has raised awareness of the relationship between heritage and carbon. And now what has become apparent is that reuse of buildings is a fundamental part of reducing carbon emissions.
As the impacts of climate change become increasingly part of daily life, a string of failed climate conferences and missed emissions targets shows that creative thinking is vital in addressing this emergency. SAVE has a long history of working with architects to devise alternative schemes as a way of demonstrating how remarkable buildings can have new life. In 2024, in partnership with Architects Journal, SAVE ran Restore, an ideas competition to reimagine M&S Oxford Street.
It was really interesting to see such a variety of participants. There were really large practices, there were really small practices, and there were even students. And they all engaged with it in incredibly meaningful ways. And it really meant that there was this big range of ideas and approaching things where people could exchange that knowledge and thought. It was not only allowing those teams to work together, but within a wider context of architects and designers who approach things in very different ways. And I think it gave an incredible richness to the exercise.
Often the challenges of reusing our historic buildings are great, but if we persist, these gifts from the past can become vital assets in the future.
In this part of the world, Wentworth Wood House is a unique building. It's very unlikely that anything like this will ever be built again. And the purpose for a building on this scale was very real when it was built, and now that purpose doesn't exist. Reimagining how you use these old buildings, which are beautiful and are historically important, the creativity that you apply to that reimagining is really vital.
It's an incredibly special thing to be able to work in a building with such a fantastic history and with such a fantastic future ahead of it as well. We want to ensure that this house becomes a house of opportunity for the people of South Yorkshire. And that might be through new jobs and through new training opportunities, but it's also about bringing culture to communities and really being able to expose people to world-class art and music and dance and theatre and all of those wonderful things that make us as humans richer people, and through those experiences. And I think that's a really important part of our role here.
We've inherited these marvellous things. Why would we not wish to respect that inheritance? Why would we want to stamp it out simply to replace it?
That's why so much of what we do isn't just about preserving buildings in aspect at all. It's not about saying no to development. In fact, it's much more about saving these buildings for future generations and making sure that they're fit for purpose in the 21st century.
Now that we're investing in our heritage, bringing it back into use, really celebrating it, that's giving people a lot of hope for the future and really helping to give them a full sense of place, sense of identity again.
The key to it, I think, has always been to be a rapid response organisation. We're small, we're lean, but we can get together fighting capacity very quickly. Because you don't know what's going to be the next challenge round the corner.
Historic buildings are much more than relics of the past. They are keys to a more sustainable and prosperous future. 50 years of campaigning has taught us that unlocking the potential of our built heritage can only happen through collaboration and by building a movement.